technically what happens, we go live and we should be, and we probably are. But I think also like it's 20 seconds late, which is why this thing is going to pop up. So I'm just filling this space with nothingness. Right. But I think also like it's 20 seconds late.
The story of my life, Adam.
So that's pretty good. So I think the trick is like saying something that would be really essential to come up 20 seconds later. So I'm not really that well planned, but with that bit of technical futzing, welcome to Virtual Connecting, and we are live from the Open Ed Conference in Phoenix, and we got a great group of people there. I'm Alan Levine. I'm your fumbling host here, and so we're here to have informal hallway type conversations with people at this last conference ever on the planet Earth. We will, we're punchy, I believe, we decided. And so I'm going to first call on some of the people who are in the remote seats to sort of chime in and say hello. So we'll go over first to Karen over in Keene, New Hampshire, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm Karen Cangelosi. I'm a faculty member at Keene State College here in Keene, New Hampshire.
Excellent. Love to have you here, Karen. And then Helen DeWard.
Hi, Helen DeWard, and faculty member with Lakehead University here in Central Ontario.
And then we'll go over to Vancouver, where Christina's waiting, or she's editing.
I'm editing. Hi, I'm Christina Hendricks. I'm a faculty member in philosophy at University of British Columbia in Vancouver.
And we love your bookshelves. And then we'll go to Detroit, where Autumn Keynes is here.
Hey everyone, my name is Autumn Keynes. I'm an instructional designer at the University of Michigan Dearborn. But I was born in Detroit and I claim Detroit as my hometown. So I'm excited to be coming to all of you. I'm also a co-director of Virtually Connecting. So it's exciting to be here with everyone.
All right. And then with the perfect attendance award, Paul Bond, who's been in both sessions.
Yeah. I'm Paul Bond. I'm a librarian at SUNY Broome Community College in Binghamton, New York. And I also teach the Open Online Digital class DS-106.
All right. Thank you, Paul. And then to Fleming College, where Terry Green is standing by. Are you on air, Terry?
No. Hi, I'm Terry. You're spoiling all the stuff we get to tell people. Terry Green, Fleming College. I am digital learning advisor.
Yeah.
As of today.
Are you editing a podcast right now?
Nope.
Okay. And now we have Liz Barksdale, who unfortunately doesn't have a camera on her computer, but she can say hello. You want to say hello, Liz?
Hi, sure. My name is Liz. I am a librarian at the University of Dallas in Irving, Texas. And I'm here because Paul Bond has been tirelessly advocating for virtually connecting for 2.5 years while we've been on a committee. Autumn kindly tried to help us. No one on our task force really understands what it is or how it works. So I am here to learn more about it. It seems very nice. It seems good, but yeah, just everyone has a hard time wrapping their heads around it. So it's good to actually kind of see it in action today.
Great. Well, we hope we put on an exemplar today. So we will now go to the conference room in a fluorescently lit place in Phoenix, Arizona. And I don't know, Clint, can you handle the introductions there?
Sure, let's start with Amanda.
Oh, okay. I'm Amanda Coolidge. I'm the Associate Director of Open Education at BC Campus.
And this morning's keynoter.
And I keynoted this morning.
I'm Martin Weller from the Open University in the UK.
Yeah. I'm Tim Carson, and I'm the Trades Open Rep for BC Campus.
I'm Chad Flynn, and I'm an electrical instructor at the British Columbia Institute of Technology.
Very cool. The trades are here. Good to see you guys.
Trades are here.
I'm a big fan of Chad. This guy's amazing if you haven't found out at this conference.
Stop. I'm a big fan of you.
This happens.
Let's have a group party.
Yeah, we already did that with Jim Luke today.
Don't we need some therapy after that? No.
Maybe.
So how was the conference for you? I mean, the keynote for you, Amanda, was it?
Yeah, it felt really good. It was nice to have some really friendly faces there, and my husband and son were also in the audience, so they were right up front. And I obviously, with being a keynote, you're quite nervous about it, but I feel like I got the message across that I wanted to make sure was put across, and talked a lot about origin stories and community and collaboration. And I was really pleased to be able to put that message out there, and hopefully others will take it on.
All right, when we have a student with her arm raised, Karen.
No, I just wanted to say I loved your keynote. You had so many wonderful points there. And one of the things that struck me is when you were sort of making some analogies with the 2016 election in the US and talking about Iowa. And of course, I'm in New Hampshire, so we think New Hampshire is more important than Iowa. But anyway, the point is, during that time, I remember being a Bernie Sanders supporter and voting for Bernie Sanders, but also being the person that when he lost the primary to say, we really have to throw our weight behind Hillary Clinton. And a lot of folks saying, no, we can't compromise our principles. I'd rather just see the whole thing go down. And so we had a lot of arguments around that, like, is really taking it down what we want to do. On the other hand, I respected the idea that there are some things that are not compromisable. So the way the election works may be different than the way that we're thinking about community building in open ed. But I think maybe it's not really a question, but how do we build community without compromising the ideals and values that we think are important and still be inclusive of everyone? And I know that's like an impossible question, but I'm asking it anyway.
Yeah, I guess when I think about that, I often think, are we sort of creating, like, are we talking about it as a conference, or are we talking about it as the community? So there are a lot of things we already know about Open Ed as a conference is, and from conversations I've had with people, is they don't feel it's very inclusive. They don't feel like their diversity is well represented. It's also, even technical things become difficult to do, like live streaming, and thanks to Clint's rogue work, it came through. So there's that part of the conference, community, where it also appeared, I think there was a lot of conversations on Twitter where it appeared that like the elite was leading the conference type thing. But then when it comes to the community, I don't know, I've been really heartened in the hallway conversations I've had, where people are like, hey, we're really proud to be able to move forward in our regional work that we're doing. And we've been talking, especially in the US, they've been talking about taking those regional conferences and maybe merging those to a more of a national conference for the US. So I feel like people are really embracing this notion of how do we move forward as a community. And in terms of the values, I don't know, like, I think I'm nervous that if we put up a set of values, that they'll never really represent everybody in the community.
True, like when the community is large enough, it's hard to be
I
inclusive.
mean, you've got 900 people here. Like,
yeah. Well, I don't want to take up all the time talking, but I think
you extended that analogy very well there, Karen. Exactly right. It's kind of, there's the purists in a way, it's like, and then there's the compromisers, and both of those need to have a space, but it's sometimes difficult for them to coexist. And I think I was also using the political analogy, like with being from the UK, we talk about Brexit at least once a day. It's like, and you're seeing that a lot of the kind of Brexiteer people are happy to sit on the side and say, we can do this, we can do that. When they get put in charge, suddenly understand, oh, actually, you have to do lots of compromise. I think that's also true of organising a conference. You have to arrange where it's going to be. You can never keep everyone happy. Even the lunch options are a potential minefield, or having sponsors in who do you have to. These things are really difficult to organise. So it's easy to say, we should do this, we should do that, but actually, once you get involved in that nitty gritty, it becomes very difficult.
Very cool. I'm looking at the chat right now. You want to pipe in, Christina?
Well, I think Helen had a question, and then I'll jump in.
I've had the pleasure of reading through your
yeah.
transcript. It's very thought provoking, and you leave with a couple of really important questions at the end about systemically looking outside of the silos. And I know that, you know, people in the open spaces have privilege there. How do we get people, like Liz has referenced, how do we get people to experience what we experience? I was watching some of the new people at the conference tweeting out about their experiences. How do we continue to engage and not pull, but promote what we're doing?
I mean, oh, okay. I think a lot of it, honestly, and might sound kind of hokey, but I think a lot of it is really reaching out to those new folks and being much more positive and engaging and optimistic, and being able to support them in the work that they're doing and to offer them any sort of advice you might have. I think it's also about going outside of our comfort zones. I know that even for me at conferences, like I gravitate very much, Lena. Hi. Doesn't hear. Oh, she's talking. Okay, she got a call. But even when I'm at conferences, I gravitate towards people that I know, because it's where I feel comfortable. But what I've been trying to do at this conference is really take note of those folks who have come out and said, you know, I'm a newbie at this conference, and there's like 450 new people here. And what I really want to let them know is, you know, they've said to me a couple of times, like, oh, this is my first and this might be my last ever open education conference. And I'm like, just because this conference doesn't continue in this format doesn't mean that the community can't thrive, right? And it's an important opportunity for us to be able to lift up those new members in a way. So either introducing those new members to the community to other people that we know, or even making a link, or even, you know, sometimes I even just ask for their card, and at the end of the conference, I'll just send them a note saying, hey, it was really great to meet you in the hallway. I hope, you know, best of luck with your endeavors. Let me know if you need anything. Because at the end of the day, we're here to support everybody. But, you know, my concern when you said about not a single issue struggle is, my concern is that we do get siloed in the type of open work we do. So sometimes we'll say things like, oh, well, I don't really care about open textbooks. I really care about open pedagogy. And it's like, okay, but you've just siloed yourself into one particular area. And what we need to do is realize that being involved in open education just isn't a single issue struggle. It means that you also have to pay attention to open access. I need to also pay attention to open research. I need to pay attention to open data. I need to pay attention to open pedagogy, and then open textbooks. So there's all of these, like, this part of the ecosystem that open has means that we have to be able to, you know, collaborate outside of the silos we create.
There's a bit of irony there about open, like maybe being a little bit siloed. I love that message. Like the last conferences I went to, I took on the strategy of picking the schedule I would normally least likely pick to go to in terms of a session. Like maybe a discipline that, you know, wasn't in my zone, or just even a technology. And there's always something to be learned from that kind of experience. And I think we kind of tend to choose those affinities, like you're saying, because there's an amount of comfort in that. And we're there for, you know, we're there to enhance our interest, you know, and you know, Chad would want things that was just all electricity at a conference, right? How's it been for you? Yes. How's it been for you guys? You're kind of new to this conference, right?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, like, I feel relatively new to the whole thing. I've been involved with Open now for over a year. And it's more of, to me, instead of siloing it, it's like an open conversation. So you constantly have these different pedagogy, you can talk about resources. It's all these conversations that have to happen. What I've appreciated about the open drawing me into the conversation, introducing me to other people. Like, Amanda's been fantastic for that. She's always grabbing me and introducing me. And meeting you at eTug and having conversations with you. Having people connecting me online, like through Twitter, has been transformational. All these people, all these friends that I've got virtually, that I finally got to meet. Conversations that happen. Like, there's just this ongoing sense of community that just needs to keep building. I think it is happening. I think it needs to continue.
Just a second. I think the audio is dropping in a little in and out. So the technology, yeah. We got you. We got the gist.
Yeah,
but
we
I
can
think not everybody. We're like, you have to have people huddle in the front, maybe. I don't know. Or it's the vagaries of the internet, you know. Which
there you go.
Like, hey.
So just to quickly recap, I guess. Conversation, collaboration, I think it's happening, and I think we can get down on ourselves about, you know, we see these silos happening, but honestly, as somebody who's new to this, I felt completely welcomed in, and I feel like completely grabbed onto and taken care of. And whether it's in person, like through Amanda and everybody, or whether it's online through all these amazing people I've met online, I think we've got to, like, yes, I understand the silo conversation, but we need to also celebrate the wins. And there is collaboration, there is community. Like Tim and I, we're new to this, but do we feel like we're part of the family now? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. This is where you say yes.
Yeah, this is my time to speak, I guess. But yeah, and not only on that, I'm a huge collaborator. I love collaborating with people from different perspectives, different backgrounds. I also view life as an apprenticeship, not just because I'm a tradesperson, but everything that we take part in is an opportunity to learn something and actually remix it and mash it into what we do in our life. And being a part of this conference, this is probably the second largest conference I've ever been to, my first Open Ed conference, all that stuff to say about that. But the power that's in the room is almost palpable. And you see all the systems at play, and you see all the levers that can be moved to make this advance further. Yeah, it's sad to know that this will be the last quote unquote Open Ed conference that will be in this context, but there's just so much power and potential in the room that the expectancy of what's going to come out of that is mind-boggling, and I can't wait to see what happens.
I think we want to all use that quote, that life as an apprenticeship. That's a wonderful frame of mind to speak. So thanks for that.
Can I jump in with some thoughts I was having as you all were speaking earlier? I haven't seen the transcript from your keynote, Amanda, so I'll take a look at that later. So I've been thinking about something that was said earlier around sort of regional conferences versus uniting those around a national conference. And so personally, my family and I have been kind of thinking about climate change, and I've been trying to reduce my travel. And plus, there are people who just can't afford to go to some big national conference. And I love the idea of regional things because they're more contextualized. So, you know, one issue with a big conference is you just have to pick, like, the people who are in charge are going to be the ones who are kind of laying out the agenda and groundwork and the things that are happening. And that's never going to be everybody. So, but if you have smaller ones, then they can be more, I don't know, contextualized to the location and easier to get to. But at the same time, then we have these silos or whatever. So, like, I don't know how to balance that idea. It just was coming to me as y'all were talking.
I think you should talk about because, like, that's a small conference. No, but I mean, that's like a small conference, but you're, you know, big
So
in terms of impact.
Well, actually, I was going to talk about, I was in a session just now about Open Ed Southern Symposium. So a woman called Stephanie Pierce had organised exactly that. I don't know if you've seen that, Christina. So they organised a kind of localized version of Open Ed in the southern states, I guess, and exactly the same. Lots of people would come who wouldn't be able to afford to go to the national conference, and it was much more contextualized around their issues and stuff. And I asked that exact question to her, you know, like, I think this is a really great idea, and it turned out to be fantastically timely for her to be giving that presentation. So I think that will happen, you know. But you know, the question I asked her, and she'd been thinking about it herself, you know, was, is there some way then connecting those things up, you know? And she gave some initial thoughts that maybe you kind of have some common themes that you might want to cover across all of them, you know, and then kind of pull those things together. But there is that kind of always that tension, I think, between centralization and decentralization. You know, it's like that there are advantages for both. So I could see how localized would be good, but that might get very practitioner focused, and maybe there's less room in those for that, you know, thinking about what is openness? You know, what does it mean? Those kind of bigger sort of philosophical questions almost. But just because I should plug OER 20 while I'm here. So in the UK, Association for Learning Technology run an OER conference. It's called OER the Year. OER 20. Next one's in London. That's been interesting because that's kind of taken a different trajectory to the Open Ed conference. It started out on the back of the JISC OER program. So everyone was really talking about artifacts. So here's the OER we've created. It's really become much more about kind of critical open education. But this year the theme is caring openness, and it's become much more of an international conference. It's quite small, only about 200. It's much more about kind of critical thinking around openness. So it's almost like that's where Open Ed started, and Open Ed has gone perhaps more down the kind of artifact route with open textbooks. They've kind of gone in different trajectories. And I think both are valid. You know, I think that kind of shows some of that. It's a broad umbrella, if you like, kind of openness.
But isn't there? We can do more than conferences, and Alt does that. I mean,
Exactly, yeah.
they run a virtual conference and they have a community, and I just hear us talking about conferences. And I'm like Christina. I'm actually. I mean, I'm going to write a post about. I'm deconferenced. I'm not going anymore. First of all, I don't have any funding, so I don't have any ability to go to conferences anymore. But like, and I went to a couple of the OERs, and it's got a great atmosphere. That kind of you know, it has a much more community-based feel, which people are pointing out in Twitter. But like, we can do other things than convene together and look at slides and tweet slides and have some great times. But like, are there other forms of community action that we can do? Because I just hear conference.
I agree.
I think this. Sorry, I think it's pause. I've seen a few people saying that like, let's not just rethink. Should it be 2 or 3 different conferences, but should it be conferences? You know, let's do something different.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to also rethinking kind of how do we act as a community. And I think a lot of it is down to how do we collaborate better in order to sustain this movement. And I said in my keynote that I really believe that people are our greatest resource in this movement. And we achieve that sustainability through that collaboration that we make. And I think that's the other thing we're very, we see a lot of is different organizations just working on their own, trying to move their agenda forward. But if we don't actually figure out, back to my Iowa metaphor.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited, I guess, about this theme for the OER conference, this care in openness, and the sub-themes that they have in there as well. Because it does seem to me like we do need to think about how we're going to function as a community, but also I've seen care just do so much. A lot of what we do in Virtually Connecting, right, really kind of comes down to the way that we work as a community, the fact that we care about the different voices and we try to find different ways to make the hospitality piece of it equitable. We just published a paper about intentionally equitable hospitality. And I mean, we just went through, we're going through a technology redesign right now, right? The technology that we used to do these got ripped away from Google. Google doesn't offer it anymore. So that's why we're using Zoom now. And like we make all of those things happen, but it's because we care about each other and we think about how we care about people when we bring, into these environments. And that's just so powerful. It seems like really often we get wrapped up in agendas or technology or resources or money. And so, yeah, I just think it's really important for us to focus on that care and hospitality aspect.
I think one of the things that I'm sort of looking forward to now that we're sort of undergoing this evolution in the open ed community within the US is that it opens up the possibility for all of those voices and more people to collaborate, like Amanda, you were talking about. So the decision-making body can be much broader and include a larger number of voices. And maybe we need to be creative about how we're including all of the different ideas that people have for getting together or working in virtual spaces and how we connect all of this complexity that we're talking about. But just the fact that we'll have more people that are going to be making decisions around how that might come about, I think is going to improve the scenario for open ed immensely.
Don't look like we're frozen.
I'm-
Keep moving.
I'm-
Here.
I'm trying to learn to live with dead air because I get really uncomfortable with dead air.
Nobody
I'm
had
trying to
anything.
pipe in.
Well, I think we should acknowledge the great work that David has done in particular in sort of moving the Open Ed conference this far. You know, it really takes these sort of, people may have criticised, but it needed that, you know, someone at least to kind of pull it through. I think that's been a real commitment from him.
I would agree.
Absolutely. I hope my comments weren't seen as just a
Oh,
criticism.
No.
not
No,
at all.
it's
I agree
yeah.
with you completely.
And when I talk about evolution, it's like, it's just moved beyond its time now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
You're coming from the biologist perspective.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, I think so too. I think, what is it, 16 years he's been doing this conference? That takes a lot of energy. You know, we do the regional conferences like Cascadia Open Education Summit. It takes me about 6 months to recover. We have like a annual spring, or this spring, we're going to have a Festival of Learning in BC, which is 400 plus, I'm looking at Clint, like 400 plus participants. And it does take, it does take an incredible amount of energy to put the care into the community, which is what Autumn was talking about. And I did talk a little bit about that on the keynote, is like at BC campus, that's like a really important part of how we bring forward community. So we offer free childcare, and we bring in, we make sure that faculty who don't have professional development funds get a scholarship. And if you're a student, you come free. And if we're at a hotel that doesn't have inclusive bathrooms, we change all the bathroom signs to be gender neutral. So like, I don't think the hotel loves it, but it's something that we see as important to make sure that our community feels cared for and feels welcome. And I also pointed out that, like, when we talk about community, there is this, we talk a lot about creating community, but unless you create a community that feels supported and really operates on this realm of possibility and not fear, then that's where you're successful. Right. And I think when we're talking about, for me, I'll be honest, like the last 2 weeks, Twitter was a scary place. Like I didn't want to put up any kind of opinion. I didn't want to put up any kind of value statement. I didn't want to share any thoughts because I wasn't sure the reaction I would receive from the community. And so, that wasn't a safe spot. So I don't know, I think when we talk about sort of how do we move forward as a community, I also think, we need to have more people who are willing to step up and talk in a positive way. That's my opinion.
And how do we keep the community going outside of these events?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to talk about them within the context of conferences and symposiums, but so much good stuff is happening offline. And how do you build, that's where the real community can start building. So I think we need to start thinking about how that can happen.
I think it's really tricky. I totally hear what you're saying, Amanda, about not wanting to have jumped in the middle of some of that Twitter stuff. I feel, I have kind of mixed feelings about it because I do think that we need room for dissent and disagreement in respectful ways, right? That it's okay for me to say, I think you're completely wrong, but I still respect you and I love your work, like, are we engaging in a respectful way in the way that we're disagreeing and showing dissent, to say, I don't think that's a good thing. I would hate, and I think people talked about this on Twitter, like we don't want to silence people into everybody play nice because we have to all agree with each other to be a community. Like, I don't know about your family, but, we're kind of arguing most of the time. And, and I was also talking about the problematic use of the word family for our community, but I just want to be careful that we don't squelch dissent and disagreement in our attempt to enthusiastically build this kumbaya kind of community.
Yeah. I also do want to say that I think another thing I'm nervous about is that this conference community might think that it's the only community in open. And what I get nervous about thinking about is like, there's also the great work that's happening in Europe. And, you know, I worked on projects in Kenya, and there's great work happening in the global South who also feel very much part of the open community, and also in the, you know, Pacific and Asia. And so sometimes when I get nervous about the way, you know, 800 people at an event are like, what's happening? The open movement is falling apart. It's like, you're like a very small percentage, you know, like, let's think of the world here, people.
Yeah, Lorna Campbell's just written a good blog post about that. So if you find Lorna on Twitter, because Jesse George Siemens, I love George, was saying that Open Ed is the central sort of node for open education globally. Not for us, but you know, the OE, OE Consortium Conference or the OER Conference are more important for us kind of outside of the US.
Yeah, that's a great blog post from Lorna, and Terry just popped the link to it.
Oh, great.
Okay, cool.
So everybody should check that out.
I'll tweet it. I'm tweeting right now.
See how this works.
Okay.
My daughter tells me my most used phrase in the house is, I wrote a blog post about that, which is similar to I'm tweeting that one.
My favorite podcast ever.
Do you like jump up and cheer when you hit publish, Mark?
That's right.
I've thrown my thoughts out into the world.
I just want to add one thing, having really enjoyed listening to you all. First of all, thank you for the reconnecting. Like, I am so grateful because Amanda is a person I respect and love a lot, and it was hard not to be able to see her in her keynote. So this is a savior. But I just want to say I'm thinking more about this this issue of conflict and how we deal with conflict, and in the environment I'm in right now, where, you know, the watering hole's drying up in Ontario, and scarcity and precarity are the new norms for us in our practice a lot of the time. It leads to a lot of conflict. And often people get really nervous when that starts to happen, because we don't see conflict as kind of a productive process. We see it as a problem. And so I've just been, we're trying to navigate it right now on a lot of different fronts, and trying to find ways to kind of make it work and find space to continue to collaborate and everything. And that is hard work, but it's really, it leads to some really good solutions. So it's something I've been thinking a lot about, and I don't like it. Like, I like people to be fine, and okay. And I spend a lot of my energy, you know, making sure that happens, but it's been a natural kind of thing that I've been having to figure out how to deal with better in my day-to-day life. So I don't know if that came up, Amanda, in your keynote or in other conversations you've had, but I'd love to hear others' reaction to that.
Oh, well, I've done those like strength finder tests, and Clint and I are on the same level where we completely avoid conflict at all costs. And so when
thanks for bringing me in.
when there's like tension in the room at all, we're like the two that are like, and out, you know. I don't know. I mean, I agree. I think there's something to be learned. I said, you know, David, when I got to the conference, I just, you know, went up to him and I said, you know, I was asking how he was doing, and he said, oh, you know, it's been really tough. And I just said, but, you know, when you look at, you've grown a conference from 30 people to what is almost 900 people. And in that sense, you can't expect everybody to have the same beliefs or the same values or the same, you know, interests. It just doesn't work that way. And so for us to be able to figure out how to have those conflicting ideas and conversations, but in a much more, I don't know, it seems like the British have like a civilized
Oh, yeah.
discourse. No, well, not Brexit, but I just mean, when you do the conferences that are about like critical discourse and open, it's more about having people kind of rethink the way you think about open. If it wasn't for a panel that I sat in on critical openness about 3 years ago, it really changed the way I saw the way we put student work out there, and like, how do we actually think about students' work in the open? So that opportunity for critique there was incredibly impactful for me because it changed a lot of my practice. But I don't know how you do it.
I have to say,
he blogs it.
I can definitely, I can confirm, having worked with Lean on a couple projects, she succeeds at that environment that she talked about. And it leads a little bit into, Amanda had kind of an interesting metaphor in her opening that she may not be aware of, but when she acknowledged the land, the Hohokam people that she mentioned, the word Hohokam, this is me with my boasting my Phoenix knowledge, but it's an interesting story that it means literally all used up. And so it was an amazing culture that flourished until about 12 or 1400. And it was like this major trade center with all of Mexico. And they built this intricate series of canals with stone tools, basic tools to irrigate. And they disappeared rather quickly. And it's debatable whether it was war or famine or just climate change. But basically, the entire civilization disappeared. And when these, ironically, Mormon settlers came in and found the Phoenix area, they found these abandoned canals, and they basically cleaned them out and just started using them again because they were perfectly engineered. For our tradespeople, they had like a drop of an inch per mile over these incredible distances. So it's kind of an interesting metaphor.
I did not know that.
It's a great story. So look up the meaning, and I may be getting it wrong, but that's about what I remember. But the Hohokam civilization, and there's a little museum right near the Phoenix airport that's pretty amazing, that has a lot of the artifacts from that culture.
What is that museum called? I think I read about it.
I think it's called Pueblo Grande.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like 24th and Washington or something like that. It's right. It's basically almost at the entrance to the airport.
Okay.
But there's a lot of irony in Phoenix being this city that rose from the desert, as if nothing was there before, and there was an incredible amount there before. So maybe Open Ed can do that.
I think
Yeah, we should wrap up.
Yep.
Get to the next sessions here.
All right. So thank you everybody for joining us from virtual and beyond, and this great group in Phoenix. Hey, Ken. You been hiding?
I'm here. I'm hiding.
All right.
You guys are running off to another hockey game or something?
Yeah. We have another
Martin is
sporting
going-
event to go to. What are you going to?
We're going to another hockey game tomorrow night.
Oh, football.
Colorado.
Oh, so you get to see.
No,
Columbus.
Columbus. Yeah, Blue Jackets.
So the Blue Jackets will be in the hotel.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah. More pictures.
All right.
So the Montreal Canadiens stayed in the hotel, and the hockey team, and Amanda's son is here, Ryder, who just started playing hockey this year. And he got to meet all of the Montreal Canadiens, and they signed his hat.
And they
You
signed
can tell, look at the
everything.
reaction of the
And,
Canadiens.
he got his whole jersey
get it.
signed. And, yeah.
Wow, he
And in
could
fact,
probably-
when we were watching the game, he's like, "Oh yeah, there's Shane Weber." He just, he was so nice to me. I'm like, we've never liked the Montreal Canadiens before, but apparently now we're fans. So.
Well, I asked him,
Probably
he said
helped
he
their
still likes
penalty
Great
kill.
team. That is amazing.
Now
Oh my
that's
God, Amanda.
community.
Yeah.
They're very open about it.
All right. I'm going
Thank you, everyone.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you
wrap
so
up
much.
there.
Nice to see everyone.
Bye.